Over. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live stream. We've had some internet issues for some reason. Our setup is all correct, but we just have slow internet. So if it is buffering on your end, I apologize. The internet will catch up, and we're just going to go for it. So I'm Andy. This is Bao. And if you haven't seen our live streams, this is our third live stream that we've done. And we're kind of seeing where this goes. We've kind of just picked topics that we want to talk about. And we've gotten actually quite a few requests. Hey, when are you doing a live stream again? And so that's really, really cool. So as long as you guys like them, we're going to continue to do them. So welcome, Bao, back to another night of live streaming.
How's it going, Andy?
It's going well. It's going well until the internet went out, right?
Yeah. I hope that it's staying on. Leave us a comment if you guys are experiencing any kind of delays. Let us know what's going on in the comments. We appreciate it.
Yes, that would be fantastic. So we can monitor. Gotcha. All right. Yeah, definitely drop in the comments if you can hear us or not. And it looks like I'm gonna have to upgrade my internet package. So I have to. We might have to start charging for this. I don't know if we can afford that. So
you need to make more trays.
I do need.
You need to get more wholesale.
I need to make more trays. I do. All right. So tonight's topic is about. That was a great segue. Is about our wholesale orders and about some wholesale work that Bao and I did separately, two separate orders, CNC work. So any questions related to sales or wholesale versus retail versus any of that stuff. If you have any questions about CNC sales, CNC wholesale, be sure to get them in the comments. And we will try to fit them in. We were talking pre-show, and we have a lot to discuss. We could talk a long time about this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. There's different topics and different areas we can talk about, like marketing, like trying to find the client, developing the products for the client. So there's definitely a big hole we can definitely dig into this.
Yes. And make sure you stay to the end because I do have some tips. I wrote down a short list here that I think are some very important things if you're looking to get going in this, important things to consider, important things to do, and they'll kind of be they won't be only at the end. They'll be mixed in, but we'll sum it up at the end. That way you can take this information and see and apply it to your own business and apply it to your own business. So let's start out. Bao, what have you been working on lately?
All right. So in terms of the furniture, I'm doing a bench right now. I have it done. Going to hopefully deliver by the end of this week. And then also that big order that I just got in for a client in New York. And we can talk about the design a little bit if you want to.
Yeah, definitely.
But essentially, she's ordering these bases that will hold a twig, and that twig will have a scented oil or something. So just imagine those, plug-in Febreze things on that you plug into your outlet to make your room smell a little bit better. So instead of doing that, I think because a lot of people don't like the chemicals in it, they use natural oils with this twig, and that's how they'll bring the scent into the room. So we're doing that, and also a base. I think the last live that we were on together, I showed you the prototype of that, and it's just a base with these small little scallop patterns. So we're doing that as well, and it's a pretty good order, and we're I'm pretty excited about it. I've been cranking out most of the bases so far. I got like 50% done this week. Actually, after this, I'm going to go mill up some more wood and batch out a little bit more because it's only going to be 10 by the time this thing ends, and I have like maybe 2 more hours of work I can put in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I love it.
she ordered uh, 350 of the small twig bases, and these are pretty small. They're 6.5 long,
Okay.
2 inches wide, and an inch and 3/4 thick.
Okay.
Um, and it's very simple. There's just a small uh, little curve that runs through the entire 6.5 inch length. So 350 of that. We're staining some of it.
Okay.
So the way that the deal is set up is 50 of that will receive a unfinished, um, pretty much unfinished wood piece. Then 50 of that will be stained ebony, and 50 we're still deciding on what she wants for those last 50.
So
And
what is the material? All the same material?
yes, it's all going to be well. No, actually, she ordered 200. She ordered 150 of the white ash white ash,
Okay.
and that's going to be divvy up into the 50/50/50 of three different types of finishes.
Gotcha.
And then she ordered 50 of a white oak that's going to be Danish oil.
Okay. So just
Um,
basically finished oak.
right, pretty much.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other is going to be walnut, and that's going to be ebonized. So it's a little bit longer process, and um, yeah, that's going to be pretty expensive to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's
that's
awesome.
what she wanted. So
Right. Right. Well, that's awesome. So I guess let's just jump into yours, and then we can jump into mine. As far as so, I think that'll be less confusing. But what? So what's the? Let's start with the bases. There's how many bases? 200.
yeah, 200 basis.
Okay, so 200 bases. So what does that process look like from raw lumber to? You should just share the finish with us, but finished product.
Yeah, so I'll start even a little bit further down the line is how this came about,
Okay, yeah,
and
that's yeah.
it came about pretty randomly. She dropped me a message on Etsy, out of all places. I've been selling on Etsy for a year and a half, maybe like 2 years or so, and most of the messages that you get on Etsy is like from customers, right?
Yep.
It's like, hey, I got my product, it looks great, or hey, my product is broken or something like that. It's more customer service based. Um, I've never got a message from another company on Etsy before. So,
I'm smirking because that is how I've gotten one of my wholesale customers.
oh, really?
Yeah, I reached out
Yeah,
on Etsy.
it's so random, right? Like
Yeah.
you would never expect that. So when she messaged me, I honestly thought it was like one of those scam things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, we're a website, we want to sell products. I thought she wanted me to essentially take my products and place it on her website. So I kind of just left it there for like a couple of days. And then I did some more research on her company. And it turns out she does pretty cool stuff. She does a lot of um, desk organization stuff. And I'm like, okay, it looks pretty cool. It looks something that I don't mind getting, being a part of because I like the design, I like the aesthetics. So I messaged her back, and um, turns out she's a real person. It's not, some scam or something like that. So we had this conversation. She showed me some initial design concepts, and her original design is nothing like what the final product that we developed together. Hers was, 4 blocks of wood, that's just square wood, combined together. Um, and she wanted something a little bit cleaner, so we developed the design that if you guys go on my Instagram, you'll see it there. Um, that process for both the twig base as well as the desk platform with the patterning, the entire design process was about 3 weeks.
Hmm.
So we're going back and forth. looking at the design, looking at different options, um, creating 3D models, and then eventually creating samples of the actual product and variations of the type of designs as well. So
Did you send her samples, like physical samples?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I ended up doing samples of the twig base, and then three samples. Well, actually, only one sample of the patterning. But I also sent her finish samples as well. So
Gotcha.
like the ebony finish and the variations of the different woods, all of that. So to give her an idea of how it would look in the end.
Yeah.
So once that three months is over, and part of that is, I guess I'll bring it up now. If you we can talk about it, is getting paid for that part of the job. It's still a job, right?
Yep. Yep.
You're spending time, you're spending effort, spending money, especially in the design part. That thing could last forever if you just let it keep on going. They can make all the changes they want. Um, so I definitely charge her for all that.
Yeah.
For every single sample, for every design iteration, it was all a separate fee from the actual product that she's going to get in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's you posted that on Instagram, and I think that's great. And um, so I've done things like that also, but I've also done things like I've sent samples out for free before.
Yeah.
Just it's kind you kind of feel it out what you have into it. If it's an existing
Right.
product that you're already doing, or if it's existing product that I'm already doing, like I don't mind just making an extra one. Like I don't have to design something. Does that make sense? And
Right. Right. Right.
I'll just send it to them, something like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, and
but
I would imagine like I would have done the same if she wanted one product that I've already had.
exactly.
I don't mind sending her one, right?
But when
Because
you're
I feel like
yeah,
that one could lend me that big job,
exactly. But if you're
right?
developing a specific product that she wants, her idea, absolutely.
Right. And that's the issue is we don't know how long it'll take. So that's why I had to charge for it.
Yep.
Because I mean, 3 weeks, that's a lot of time
Yeah.
to spend and not get paid for it, right?
Yep. Yep.
So once she approved the design, um, of course the milling process starts, buying the wood, sourcing the lumber. I checked different lumber yards for their pricing, because with the wholesale is if you can keep your material costs as low as possible,
Yes.
one, it's more profit. It could either be more profit for you, or it could be a lower cost of production for the client, which means you're most likely going to get the job, right?
I
If a client can buy a product for $1 versus $2, she's going to buy for the dollar, or she's going to go to the person that can sell it for $1.
yeah, I think not to spill all my secrets here at the 13-minute mark, but you you hit the nail on the head. Like sourcing material is I need to do a YouTube video on sourcing material and the importance of sourcing material. Like that single thing makes or breaks a deal.
Right.
Like I can't tell you. So I showed you, not to get too sidetracked, but I'm working on this. Let me reach over here. I'm working on this little box, right? So I was working on materials, sourcing materials for this new product, this new gift box, and it was going to cost me $4.50 per box for materials, and there's no way I could do it. So I searched and searched. I spent 3 days looking for material to cut that because I needed that material cost to be around a dollar to $2 into that box, because of all the other things I had to do to it and all that. But that was my price point, and I finally found a local place that had the material that I needed that would work and the sizes, and I moved my price point from my material price point from $4.50 to 75 cents. Yeah, it took me not all day, but it did take me a 3-day span to source that. But if I would have never moved, my point is, if I would have never spent that time to move that price point from 450 to 75 cents, then I would have just had to throw it in the trash, and it never would have even worked. So
Right. And a lot of time it's whenever you lock in a deal, right? They agree with that price that they're going to buy it for. I mean, this is how I treated the contracting world, right? A client comes to you, they already agreed to the price. Um, you can still try to negotiate your material costs as your vendors or your lumberyard or whatever. You could try to negotiate it down because at that point they're already buying it. They already bought the product from you. Now it's your job to try to, I guess, save a little money or try to get that cost of the material down as much as possible, so that you have a little bit more of a cushion, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen during production. Let's say you buy the material and you kind of screw up, you know, like you maybe not calculate the enough waste, which I kind of ran into this situation where some of the materials that I picked out from the lumberyard, it wasn't that great. Um, I kind of I kind of aimed a little bit too perfect in terms of the quantity and the amount of lumber to pick. So some of the wood, whenever I milled it down, there were still some rough edges that it I couldn't cut it anymore. If I did, then the actual product would be super small. It will be like, instead of 2 inches wide, it'll be an inch and like inch and 3/4 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely no. You can't send that to your client at that point, right? So you pretty much pretty much lost a little bit of stock there. But because I was able to negotiate the lumber cost down a little bit more based off of the estimate that I gave, or a little bit less than the estimate that I gave to the client, I was able to give myself a little bit cushion so that I can maybe buy a little more material because of those small little things that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I cannot stress that enough. The importance in my deals of sourcing material, and it's such a rat race, and like in every area, because you have the standard lumber yards, and then you have guys around here. You have guys that do it on their own, who kiln dry and a bunch of stuff, and then you have people around here that I can get walnut super cheap. I can get walnut like $3 for an 8-foot board, 4/4, but it's not dried. It's all wet.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's so many things. Like, yeah, I'm gonna make a video. That's You guys look out for that. I'm gonna make a video on sourcing material.
Yeah. One question I do want to ask you is, you've done how many kind of wholesale large scale projects?
Oh man. Well, I've worked with three different main clients, and between those three clients, I've worked on trying to think, about 5 different products.
Okay.
Between them, and and they all range.
Yeah.
But that's
Did you ever run into situation? And I think this is this is my first. If you guys didn't tune in earlier, this is my first wholesale client, so I'm kind of newbie at this. Did you ever run into a situation of the client expecting the wood to look a certain way, and it didn't come out to be the way that they were expecting, I guess?
Yes. So that's a great point, and I think that needs to be discussed with the client ahead of time.
Right.
But the hard part is usually the client, unless they're very experienced. Most of the clients that you work with, they're not woodworkers, and they really don't know wood. So when they say they want to make something, I ran into this exact problem. they said they wanted it made out of maple. Well, as you know, maple is a very wide category. There's hard maple, there's soft maple, there's every kind of maple. Like, there's so many different kinds of maples, right? And then about can there be any, maple's not a good example. I guess it can be, but sapwood versus heartwood and all those things. There's so many variables is my point.
Right.
And I ran into that. They wanted a white, almost a white maple. They didn't want any dark, like hard maple is darker. And they didn't like that, especially to put finish on it. So a lot of these clients that we're talking about are, I guess when we talk about we should probably define wholesalers and what these people are doing with our products, because I think that makes a big difference, right?
Yeah.
They're usually they're taking our products and they're reselling them. And so that's important because they're trying to achieve a certain look.
Right.
Because they're designers, basically. But with wood, there's no guarantee, right?
Yeah. So essentially, you're just a manufacturer at that point.
Yeah.
You're manufacturing their product so that they can sell to their consumer.
Yes.
And part of that is there's a certain expectation when it comes to the final product. Because the situation that I ran into was I send the samples over to the client, of course, assuming that she understands that wood is different. Every single piece of wood is different.
Mm-hmm.
Tones, variations, all that stuff. We know that as woodworkers. We know that you can't get the exact same wood grain. You can't get the exact same tone, right? Because with white oak, you have white oak that's really dark. You have white oak that's a little bit more of a gold honey color.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have white oak that maybe includes more sapwood. And then some white oak might even look like red oak. They have like a little red tone to it, right? Yep. So that's the situation that I ran into. And I think when it comes to handling those situations, like you said, it's kind of establishing that in the beginning. And I think the issues that I ran into is assuming that she knew exactly what wood is supposed to be, how it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, and I did the same thing. I think anytime you're working with one of these, anytime you're working with any big deal or you're making a deal for a certain amount of projects, or even if you're building a table for somebody, it's not a bad idea to have an agreement in place, written down.
Right.
I think we like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but at the end of the day, when it comes to these, they don't know what they don't know, and we don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So if everything's just written out, that's best case scenario. And so including the line of there's like with something along the lines of doing the best you can to keep this aesthetic, but I cannot. Obviously, there's certain levels, like you can't bug holes, for example. Like if there's a bunch of bug holes in a piece of wood, you probably shouldn't use it if your client doesn't want it. But when it comes to color and texture and stuff, those things are so difficult. I mean, you'd go through 1,000 board feet trying to find all the same colored wood. You know what I mean?
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
And if the client expects that, then you got to kind of tone it down a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
Even with stains, right? Like we know stains with different woods will look very different. So you got to make sure that all of that is handled earlier on, so you don't run into the situation where the client says, "Hey, this is not looking like the sample that you gave me."
Right.
Yep.
Well, let's jump in real quick. Let's take a break and jump into the chat. We've got a couple questions here. Rollin, who's been here every time, I believe. Nice to see you, Rollin. I believe he's from Kentucky. So he said, yes, I loved your post about making sure you're compensated for the design on Instagram he's talking about.
Thanks, Rollin.
And he said, the question's for you, Bao. You don't have to give specifics when you're charging for the design process, do you use the same calculations as if you were doing the whole project, but just a prorated amount?
Um, that really depends on the project. For this project in specific, particular, um, I knew that milling and making the product wasn't going to take that much time, right? So what I did was I set a standard fee for um, three, well, two standard fees, two separate fees. One is the design, and two is the CNC timing that's needed for the samples. All right. Uh, we're not. I'm not talking about the actual products just yet, or how to calculate the price for the actual product. This is just design and the samples. The design, it's really up to you how much time how much you want to value your time at that point. I prorated based off of an hourly fee. If I know it's a very extensive design, then it might be a lump sum cost based off of how much hours I think will be needed to get the design done. And part of that is I include two changes, minor changes to the design if the client doesn't like it. And that's it. So if they do want any of the changes beyond that, then it'll be charged at the hourly fee. So that's how I kind of handle the design. And then the CNC work is based off of per hour, how long it takes to
Like
get the products done.
machine time?
Right, machine time. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
And it's a minimum of 1 hour. So if this product takes me 1 minute, then I have to charge for that hour.
Yep.
So
Very nice. John Mark asks, how do you help manage expectations with wholesaler when pitching or designing a new product for them? So, what I would say is kind of what we said. Managing expectations up front is key. Getting on the same page and communicating is key. I feel like when you ask yourself, like, oh, I wonder if they know this, like, never assume that they know something.
right.
And having an agreement in place is key also.
Yeah.
I think asking your clients what their expectations are, because like you want them to be happy. That's your goal, is them to be satisfied. So as exciting as it is to jump into a project and to show them all the things that you can do, or they're excited about, the ideas that they have, like it's worth pumping the brakes and being like, okay, we've moved far enough. Before we move any further, let's discuss some of these details. And now you don't want to, as soon as someone sends you an email and says, hey, I want you, or hey, I've got an idea, it's not, you don't need to sign a contract at that point. But it's better to do it earlier than later, for sure.
Yeah, I like the fact that you brought up, asking questions. I think oftentimes we don't ask enough questions from the client. And I think we, as designers, as makers, we often let the client lead too much. And they sort of tell us exactly what they want rather than we asking them what they actually need. Because sometimes, from my experience at least, what they want might not be exactly what they actually need, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just like that base that she initially showed me, she said she wanted that, but it didn't align with what answers she was giving me when I was asking her questions about who her client base is, what type of design are you looking for, what are you trying to solve for your client in terms of the product. So asking questions, good questions, so that you can figure out exactly how you can help this person. Because for me, at least, not every single client should be is good for me. That's how I look at it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You want to make sure that the client is going to be able to work with you and you are able to work with the client, and there's a good relationship going on there.
Yeah.
So that's definitely where asking questions would help you to figure out if this client is right for you. So we ended up creating the base a certain way that was different from her original design because of the questions that I asked her, right?
Yep.
And she actually loved it a lot more than her initial concept.
Yeah, that's
Which,
awesome.
it's like that's a win-win for everybody. Like,
Yep.
I get to design a product that I am proud of, and then she gets the product that she's absolutely in love with, and she feels like she could market it, and she feels like she can actually have a customer base that can buy it, right? So that's definitely. I'm glad you brought it up. Is asking questions, and for sure making sure that you're handling all those expectations. And I kind of learned it the hard way with this client, with some of the smaller details, but definitely bring up all of the concerns ahead of time and never assume that the client knows, because the way you spell assume, as we all know the saying, right?
Yep. No, it's so true.
You and me.
Yes.
So you never want to assume.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's a good question.
Yeah. So there's one more here real quick. Logan's, do you guys sign contracts for the items you sell? Depends on the item. But for wholesale, yes, I have a contract in place. And it outlines everything. So.
Yep. I also have I should have an extensive contract. I just haven't developed it yet, but I do have disclosures within the invoices. So there is a terms of service as well as disclosures as to if the client pays for it. That means they are agreeing to these certain things.
Yeah.
All that is like, the tone of the wood is going to be different.
Yeah.
Small variations in the final dimensions might occur. Things like that.
So I have something written down here that I want to discuss tonight, and it kind of goes into what I've been working on, or what I finished up last week, and I think it'll be extremely valuable. And I've gotten a lot of questions. I just released a video last Friday about the process of making 100 cheese trays, and I did that for a wholesaler. And the number one question that I got is, how much did you charge? And I kind of shied away from that because, and so this is the disclaimer talking about this whole thing is, I have a contract with them, and there's a part in there that I have a non-disclosure about pricing, about who they are, about, it sounds kind of like black market, but it's not.
Yeah.
But they want to protect their brand, to protect their identity. So I can't disclose like all those details. It's not that I just want to leave them out, but the whole scenario I think will be so helpful. And so backing up a little bit, when I first got into CNC stuff and started getting serious about making money with my CNC, I've spent, this was like 3 years. 3 years ago, I purchased my CNC. So I'd say about 2 years, this process has been in my mind, and I thought very hard and long about this. And there's other videos about this on my YouTube channel. And so it comes down to, I had this thought one day, and we talked about this in the last live also, about retail, creating one-of-a-kind custom items versus wholesale. And so it hit me one day as I was making a sign for somebody, one sign, charging them, I don't know, $75, but I made that sign, I got $75, gave them the sign, and then it's over with, right? And then and this is the most common way to sell, then you have to do that over and over and over and over again. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with 100 customers. Like, that just, to some people that sounds appealing, but to me, I don't want to deal with 100 custom and trying to appease 100 people, because out of those 100 people, I'm not going to be able to satisfy them all. And not most of them, but a lot of them aren't going to be willing to pay what it's worth. and it just seems like a hassle. That's just my approach, not necessarily. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that was my thought process.
And you're constantly always trying to find a new client.
Always.
If it's just one-off.
Always.
You're trying to find somebody new, making sure somebody else is lined up, so that adds a different level of difficulty as well.
Correct. Okay. So I started thinking, it hit me one day, and this is what set me down the wholesale path, was go into any major store. You go, I don't pick Lowe's, pick Target, pick Walmart, pick any of them. Now, they do have their own product lines most of the time, at least Walmart's and stuff like that. But I don't think Lowe's does. But Lowe's, they have the name, they have the brand, but they're selling everybody else's stuff. They're not selling anything that they've made. So it hit me, like, most of our buying and selling and most of our commerce in the marketplace is not sold to the end user by the person that made it. Mm-hmm. So I started thinking, like, well, if all these people are doing it, like, or if all these other businesses are making a business out of not selling directly to their customer, why can't I do that? And so one thing led to the next. I started going to Etsy, and I started finding we talked about Etsy a little while ago. I started finding people that sold one thing. So I found one lady out in Seattle that made custom-made soap dispensers. So she used her Cricut machine and she put labels on them. Really, she did a fantastic job. And she was selling these wooden trays that these soap dispensers sat on. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I can make those for you. And one thing led to the next. Next thing you know, I was making soap dispenser trays. And she would just package them and sell them on her Etsy page with the soap dispenser. So the key to all this working, people say, well, I don't want someone else making money off my product. Some people really wrestle with that. But what I say to them is that these brands, so just for the sake of avoiding contractual things and all that, let's say Lowe's, for example, is buying a wooden cheese tray, and they're paying me X amount, and they're going to be able to turn around and sell it for X amount. Take that scenario versus me taking my wooden tray and selling it direct to the customer. And let's even go as far as to the same customer that's willing to buy from Lowe's is willing to buy from me. The customer that's willing to buy from both of us, same product, they're willing to pay more because they bought it from Lowe's. Then they're willing to we're talking about the same product here, then they would ever buy it from me. Mm-hmm. And so the power of these big brands, now you can go to take that in the home decor section, right? Like West Elm or Crate and Barrel or any of that. Like, they're not they're not producing their own products. Mm-hmm. But with those name tags on them, with West Elm or Crate and Barrel, people are willing to pay $60 for a cheese tray that I could sell for $20. So it's the power of branding, and the reason I share all of that is because this is where we enter, and I can sell. So typically, my wholesale products, I sell them for 50% of what they'll retail for. Not for what they'll retail for me, but what they'll retail for the retailer. And so that usually comes out to the same that I could sell them directly for. Maybe a little less. But maybe 10% less. But at the end of the day, it's about volume. And so Crate and Barrel can sell 1,000,000 to 1 of what I can because of the power that they have. So I'm willing to sell half price to them. They're thinking it's half price, but it's what I would sell on my website for. And West Elm is not the person I have a contract with. That's what I use an example for. But so that's how that whole scenario came to be, and that's why this wholesale market works, because I can make 100 trays and sell them for 50% of what they're going to sell them for, and make the same amount of money as if I was to sell 100 trays to 100 different people.
Yeah. Now, sticking on to that conversation, and I don't want you to have to reveal too much if you can't.
Yeah.
But my question would be that conversation of how much they're going to sell it for versus how much you're going to charge them.
Yeah.
Was that a very straightforward conversation, or how did you handle the price structure of that? And I can talk about how I handle it afterwards as well.
Yeah. So it's been different every time how that's happened. It's probably not a good idea. I've never reached out directly and said, hey, how much are you going to sell these for?
Because usually they don't tell you.
Usually they don't tell you.
Yeah, until you find out, like, oh, they're selling for like, what?
Yeah.
100 times my price?
Yeah. So my pricing structure. So first of all, I would answer, that's why it's so great to start out on Etsy and search for items that are already being sold. So like going back, because I can talk about the, it's best just to use a real life example. I can talk about the soap dispenser trays. So she was selling them on her website for $34. Now I had that knowledge going in.
Right. She already posted it.
She already posted it. And so I came in and I sold them to her for $16. For $16 a piece, which that wasn't a very complex tray. It wasn't like one of your trays. This was a very simple, just they were 7-inch by 3.5-inch trays, very simple. And so I had that knowledge there. Now, to answer your question on the other side, a lot of research. Honestly, a lot of research. Finding comparable items, I kind of picture myself, I've used it before, as kind of like a realtor. Like, you have to see what the market's out there. You use every website you can think of, but you also ask friends, you also ask family. Like, you just do a lot of research. And always aim a little high, because so come up with your number, and I would add, I don't know, if I'm coming up the top of my head, I would add 20%, because at the end of the day, that 20% is not going to scare them off, because they'll come back and be like, no, I can't do that, but I can do this. And so
leave a little room for negotiation.
Yep. And every single time, every single deal, all 3 people that I've dealt with, all 5 products that I've made, they've haggled me on price. Every single one of them. So expect that. And they'll most likely always say, no, I can't do that. Then you can come back and say, well, I can do it for this. So that's how I've worked through those things.
Yeah. And for me, it's I take, being that this was my first one, and when you said doing the research, searching for similar products and what they're selling for. Well, in my case, it's no one has done it from what I've seen before. Similar design style or a similar product. So doing the research was a little difficult, right?
Yep.
Because this is totally custom made. How I approached it was more of a straightforward business approach, which is profits. Like, what profit do I need to charge to make money? At the same time, of course, I'm paying myself, taking care of the material costs, and then on top of that, taxes, fees, whatever. And then on top of that, I'm putting on my profit, right? And for me, I didn't know what she was going to pay. She was going to charge for these products on her website. Um, and that wasn't something that I thought of to ask about, and maybe I should. Like, I could see a conversation where it's like, okay, where's your target price
Yeah.
when you launch on the market, right? I think that's a pretty we
That's
can kind of
Mhm.
ask that question, right?
That's a great. I think asking for because absolutely, I think asking for what is your, where do you see this where do you see this product in the market? Do you see it as a high end?
Right.
And kind of ask what would a price range be? I think that's a fair
Yeah. Because then
estimate.
that would tell us, okay, what material we can use,
Yes.
how much machining time is going to be involved,
Yep.
how simple or complicated the design is going to be. Because if she's charging $100 for a tray, well, maybe we could do it out of hardwood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Could we do it out of uh, walnut, or could we do it out of um, wenge?
Yeah. Next thing you
Right?
know,
Two
you're making
different.
you're making out of ebony. Ebony.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a varied uh, item that
Yeah.
affects the price, right? So I didn't think of that. Maybe I'll probably bring that up for another client or something.
Yeah.
But my approach was, what is my material costs? What is the time involved in actually milling one product on the CNC?
Yeah.
And what is my finishing costs in terms of sanding, time sanding, cutting it, and applying the stain,
Yeah.
and then the material costs for miscellaneous items like the stain and wear and tear on the machines.
Right.
And then usually my target profit is around 50%.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like it's going to be worth it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm already paying myself, right? All the time has already been allocated into the item itself, the price of the item itself that I'm going to sell her.
Yeah.
So I'm not working for free, right? The profit is not my time invested into the product.
That is.
And I think
Yes.
the business part, we could talk about that in another
Yes.
live, but
Yes.
you want to make sure that you separate those two, because profit is not, it's not the same as the time that you already invested into the making of the product.
Right. And that becomes more and more important as you, like we have, turn this into our businesses. Like
Right.
if you already have a day job and you're just doing it on the side, I mean it's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? It all depends on what your goals are. And going back to the realtor, like the housing, like I think a realtor is a perfect example, because Bao, when you go to buy a house, you don't go directly to the realtor without knowing how much you can spend. Usually you go
Right.
to the bank first and they say, hey, this is the price range that you are approved for. Same thing with a car or anything else. So using that same thought process, like there's no reason why you can't have that same conversation with clients. Like, hey, what kind of product are we talking here? Are we talking, some Purple Heart and or in walnut? Are we talking pine and So I think it's a valid conversation. But
Yeah.
the key to the whole thing is there are some wrong ways to do it, but there's not just one right way to price your items.
Right.
Um,
Right.
And at the end of the day, like you have to be okay. Like sometimes you miss, and it's okay as long as you're happy with what you're making on the item and someone is reselling it for 5 times of what you made. Like you have to be happy with what you made off from it.
Right. Right.
That is extremely important.
Yeah.
And so although that you price it, you know, I've kind of priced things backwards like that in this wholesale side. I guess in this wholesale kind of small designer crafty niche, right? I've kind of worked backwards, but at the end of the day, I have to be okay, and I have to cover my costs, and I have to make money. So
Yeah, yeah. As long as you're comfortable and you're taking care of your basic needs, just make sure you're happy with that.
yeah,
Right?
yep,
You don't want to be greedy, right? Because
yep,
then you can price yourself out of the market,
yep,
and they're not going to give you the job. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're just taken care of.
yep,
That's it. Your business is taken care of. Your business is growing, and you're investing back into your business. Things like that.
yep, absolutely. Well, we're coming up on our close here.
And that was quick.
Man, it was. I think we
We
say
didn't
that every
go
week.
longer, man.
I think we say that every week. So, but I've got a couple points here that I want to kind of end on because I knew this conversation was going to kind of flow back and forth through things. But to leave all you who have joined us tonight and who is watching, because you can go back and watch this. This is recorded to my YouTube page, so although that you're here live, you can go back and reference this information later. And so a couple things, Bao, and I didn't share these with you ahead of time. I meant to, but a list here of how. So what I want to leave you guys with is how do you position yourself to get these types of jobs? How there's a question CNC or CNC. Hey man, hey, how you doing? Where do you find these retailers? So to answer that question is it takes a few things that I've seen. The first thing is showing you're capable. And what I mean by that is before you even reach out to retailers, you have to have some documented, established work, whether that be your social media pages, whether that be a website, whether that be pictures. The longer the track record, the better. So Bao and I have fairly active, yours is more active than mine, Instagram pages. But I've used that so many times with retailers. Actually, so one retailer I got through Instagram. They found my work on Instagram. And then the other two that I have dealt with, I used my Instagram. I sent them a link to my Instagram and said, hey, here's some of the work that I've done. So that is the one thing. You want to have some justification of why you're reaching out. Number two is making connections with those people or with people that see you're capable. So if you just have pictures on your phone, no one is really going to see those. So you have to actively go out and you have to show those to people. Where when you're on social media, for example, or a website, like that is there. People can come across that and people can find that. So, but making connections, reaching out to people, meeting new people, I can't tell you how important that is.
Yeah.
Number three that I found is striking while the iron is hot. And that basically what I mean by that is moving quickly on these deals. And not wasting their time. What I found is that these people that are reselling products or selling products are extremely busy. So I always try to keep my communication to the point and tell them right away how I can help them. If it's an existing product, if it's, whatever it may be, if it's, but if it's an opportunity, not waiting a couple days, not letting that set in my email for a week, but reaching out to them right away and kind of always, they're never waiting on me. I found is very important. And then 4, we touched on a little bit, but the price has to be right. I've walked away from more wholesale deals. I've walked away from more wholesale negotiations than I have signed wholesale clients. And that's because most of them beat me up on price. They were fantastic opportunities, but they beat me up on price. And just because, don't mistake, because you have wholesale work and you're making 100 trays, but you're not making any money on them, say you're just breaking even, back to Bow's point earlier, that's not the goal of wholesale. Just because you're making products doesn't mean you're making money. So the price has to be right. Don't let them beat you up on price.
Mm-hmm. And they'll beat you up.
They will beat you up.
We'll try to squeeze every nickel out of you.
Yes. Yes. And last one, not to get philosophical, but to be honest, I think it comes down to this a lot. And this is life in general, but not to get deep, but on CNC wholesalers, you have to do things you don't want to do the things that you want to do. I've made products that I have not wanted to make that led to products that I did want to make. And just because it isn't a great big bowl of gold right away, if you see potential in that relationship, I've built, I can't tell you, I've driven a couple hours one way just to drop off something I did not want to make, but it led to